Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second shelf. You might have noticed that I haven't done a tag in a while, which also means that my backlog is piling up again, and I was doing so well in the first half of the year. But anyway, so I thought I'd do a Tag Wednesday tag because I don't upload on Tuesday but on Wednesday. And one of the tags that I have, you know, been tagged in for quite a while is the series of tags that actually Sean invented, and those are the alphabet soup tags, in which he just picks, like in such a soup where you have these alphabet letters in it, he just picks a letter and then comes up with a couple of prompts or questions. It's a fantastic idea, and I know he uploads every 6 weeks, 2 months with a new tag, so he will keep us busy for a while. He already did the A is for author. I will leave a link to his playlist down below. And he already uploaded the third in the alphabet soup tag, E is for ending, which is now on my backlog. And I will leave a link to his E is for ending video down below as well. But this one is the N is for Novella. So here we go. N is for Novella. First question. The last good one you read, Novella. And yeah, if you follow me, you know that I don't read that many novellas or short stories. So I picked one that is 70 pages long, more a long short story. Sorry, Sean, but what can you do? So I picked Charlotte Perkins Gilman, The Yellow Wallpaper, published in 1892. Perfect Victober read, by the way, if you're looking for a short read, because I think one of the challenges in Victober is read a Victorian book that is under 200 pages. So you could read this one. It has been published separately, so it is a book. Anyway, it's about a woman descending into madness. And it's so atmospheric and claustrophobic and harrowing. I thought, it's brilliant. Charlotte Perkins Gilman is, a writer in the late 19th century, and she wrote feminist texts. So it's about the female experience of being confined in a marriage and not doing well, but then called mad because you are unhappy. If you haven't read it, I can certainly recommend it. It's a brilliant, brilliant short story, novella kind of thing. Anyway, I'm looking at the questions here on the screen. I'm sorry, but you know that already when I do tags. Number 2, N is for neighbor, a work of fiction focused on, or at least for a large part, on neighborhood, on the relationship between neighbors. And I thought the idea, when I watched Sean's original video, that he said, well, a lot of books, focusing on relationships, whether it's family or love relationships. But this one, neighbors, is different and maybe needs some more focus. It was not that easy for me to find a book, and I found one that is not entirely focused on neighbors, but one portion of the book is focused on the relationship between neighbors, and that's Barbara Kingsolver, Prodigal Summer, published in 2000. And as I said, it's not a book about neighbors. Not the whole book. It's set in the Appalachian Mountains, and it has 3 protagonists and 3 points of views. One is a wildlife biologist living on the mountain top, and her relationship with nature, but also with an unexpected visitor. And you have down in the valley, in the village, you have a farmer's wife who becomes widowed at the beginning of the novel and then has to deal with the farm life all by herself. And the third segment or portion of the book is about 2 neighbors, a grumpy old man and his lifelong already feud with his elderly female neighbor, and they talk about trees and pesticides, and slowly, the relationship between them develops. In the end, it's more of a friendship, but it starts out as a relationship between neighbors. So I think I can pick Prodigal Summer for this prompt. I have to admit, uh, for those of you who might then check out Goodreads, it was not, the book as a whole was not that successful for me, but I really liked these two grumpy people, getting in discussions about pies and trees and such. So that was really nice. Okay. Question number 3. N is for name. A writer you'd recommend whose first or last name starts with an N. And I picked a writer that I think it's a real pity that she is all but forgotten, and that is Irene Nemirovsky. She was killed in Auschwitz in 1942, a Jewish Ukrainian writer who lived in France and wrote in French originally. And her work, it's not a big body of work, of course, because she was killed so young, but it deals with the beginning of the World War. Suite Française, for instance, is certainly something that I can recommend. I will leave a link down below to her author page on Goodreads, so you can check out her various works. And because she wrote in the first half of the 20th century, I want to point out that she would be a perfect pick if you're participating in Mel's, from Mel's Booklet Adventure Readathon, Gone with the Book. I'll leave a link to her announcement video down below, but just very shortly, it's a read-along that takes place in the last week of November and the last week of October and the last week of November. And you have to pick a book by an author that has been published in the first half of the 20th century, so between 1900 and 1950. And Irene Nemirovsky, of course, fits perfectly. So maybe if you need an inspiration, you can look up Irene Nemirovsky's work. On to the next question. Number 4. N is for Nuptials, a work of fiction that didn't suck about a wedding. And again, it wasn't easy for me to pick one, probably because I'm not that interested in weddings and wedding literature or anything. So I had to think about it, but then I remembered a book that is a little bit older, and that is Dorothy West, The Wedding, published in 1995, just 3 years before Dorothy West died. Dorothy West, of course, you probably know her. She is one of the most prominent members of the Harlem Renaissance. And this book is set in the 1950s in Martha's Vineyard. And the protagonists are well-to-do bourgeois black people in that community there. And in one family in particular, the Coles, and the daughter Shelby is about to marry. So it's about her wedding. And she chose to marry a white jazz musician. So this book is, as most of Dorothy West's work, about race, about relationships, about family, but it's also about a wedding. So I think it's a good pick for this question. On to question number 5. N is for not aging well. Just like me. Thank you, Sean. A book you like less and less, you like less than when you read it. And for this one, I picked a book that I didn't love to begin with, but I really like less and less the more I think about it. And it's a BookTube darling, or at least it was back then when it was published in 2015. So don't throw stones at the screen and don't hate me. And I'm talking about A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, like I said, published in 2015. And you probably read the book or heard about the book. It's about a group of friends in New York, and the group centers around one person, Jude, who has a very troubled past. He has been abused as a child, sexually abused also, abused in his adulthood by various people. He enters into a relationship with one of the friends, and he has trouble with intimacy, physically and mentally. And the whole book is centering around how this group of people tries to deal with that and tries to, quote unquote, help him. And like I said, yeah, I didn't like it to begin with very much, but because it got so much praise and was so loved on BookTube, in the beginning, I reread it, and then I tried to figure out what I was seeing wrong. Maybe sometimes that happens. But as time goes by, I'm really, I don't like it. I think the story is uh, too much over the top. I thought the fact that obviously the author wanted to make sure that we see how abused Jude is. There is, like, everywhere he goes, everybody he meets before he meets this group of friends is abusing him physically, mentally, sexually. I just couldn't believe it, and I didn't find the characters around him very deep or very fleshed out. I didn't like this sort of moral, very heavy moral sauce on top of the book. So yeah, it was just not a book for me, unfortunately. Okay, next question, number 6. N is for N, a book title with lots of N's. And for this one, I picked a book that I haven't read yet, but that I want to read, historical fiction, and that's Sarah Collins' The Confessions of Franny Langton, published earlier this year. And if I counted correctly, there are 6 N's in the title. Yeah, me. It's historical fiction about a former slave, if I remember correctly, and a murder. And I have to admit, I don't know much more than that, but it sounded really good, and I had it saved on my to read list, but I haven't gotten around to it yet, unfortunately. All right, on to the next one. Number 7, N is for not sure, a book you keep changing your mind about whether to read it or not. And for me, it's not so much one particular book, but it's a whole an author and a whole series, and that's Marilynne Robinson, and in particular the Gilead series. I haven't read any Marilynne Robinson so far. I know, shame on me, but whenever I pick up a book by her, Housekeeping or Gilead, and then I flip through and then I think, oh, I don't know, should I? It's I the my first instinct when flipping through the books is that's probably not for me, and then I put it down. I mean, I have the Gilead series on the shelf, and then I pick it up again and think, well, it might be. So I just can't make up my mind. So tell me, should I read the Gilead series by Marilynne Robinson, starting with the first book? I mean, I'm not committing to a whole series yet, but at least the first book, Gilead. Let me know. Okay then, number 8. We are almost done. Yeah. N is for Nitpick, a small literary, writing, or book-related thing that drives you around the bend. I have many, but I'll pick 3. The first is if I can't find the cover artist. So if I look at the cover and then I want to know, if there's a picture or painting or whatever, I want to know where that comes from. And if I really have to look hard for it, I hate that. The second thing I hate is stickers on books, especially printed on stickers that you can't remove. I think that is an abomination and should be punishable by death. And the third thing is if I can't find, if I retranslated fiction and the translator is not on the cover. I mean, you always find the translator in the book, but I think the translator should be on the cover because, it's not that he or she wrote the book. I know that. The author still wrote the book, but it's important work, translation, so I think it should be on the cover. So those are 3 really nitpicky, tiny things that absolutely drive me around the bend. Question number 9. N is for next to nothing. A book you read as an adult and you can't remember the first thing about. And Sean made clear as an adult, so not like, in your childhood. And for this one, I picked a book from my shelf. I went through my shelf, and there's one book in particular, Sarah Hall, How to Paint a Dead Man, published in 2009, which I read in 2011. And I can't even talk about the book because I don't remember the first thing about it. I can tell you the blurb. It's about an artist and a blind girl and a curator. And I liked it because that's what I wrote in the book. And that's all I can remember. So it's now on the reread pile, which begs the question whether it's a reread if you can't remember the first thing about it. Question number 10. N is for New Zealand. A book or writer you want to discover or want to read from New Zealand. And I have 2, and that is Patricia Grace. I read her book Chappie and quite liked it. So I will leave a link to her author page on Goodreads down below. And the other author is Janet Frame. And I had the Carpathians published in 1988 on my TBR for quite a while, and I would really like to read more of Patricia Gray's and read my first Janet Frame. Okay, last couple of questions. Number 11, N is for Nodding Off, a mind-numbingly boring book. That was not such an easy question to answer, because if I really find a book mind-numbingly boring, I will not finish it. But sometimes I have to finish a book, for instance, because I have to write a review or because I read it for a book club. And one of the books that I read for my real-life book club was mind-numbingly boring, for me at least. And that's Virginie Despentes, a Vernon Subutex, a French book that was published a couple of years ago about, this middle-aged guy whose life is just falling apart. And I was yawning all through the book. But we are a group of 5 people discussing books, and 2 of them really liked it. One thought it was okay, and I was the only one who thought it was just so boring that I wouldn't have finished it if it hadn't been for the book club. And then number 12, N is for next, the next book you're going to read. And this video will go up on Wednesday. I'm pre-filming it because I'm traveling. So I was thinking, which book will I take on my travel? And I'll probably start the second half of this week. And that is this book, Becoming Jane Eyre by Sheila Kohler. And I'm reading this as a sort of a Victober read, because it's a novelization of the Bronte sisters, and in particular Charlotte, while she is creating Jane Eyre. So this will most probably be my next read after this video has gone up on Wednesday. And the last, I think that's the last one. Yeah, N is for Now It's Your Turn, Tag a Bevy of Booktubers. And I know that many of you have done that tag already, and I didn't check who was tagged and who wasn't tagged, but I'm just going to tag everybody whose name starts, or whose name has an N in it, or whose booktube channel name has an N in it. So that makes it fairly easy, because I think that's probably everybody. Anyway, that was the alphabet soup tag number 2. N is for Novella. Thank you very much, Sean, for creating these tags. I think they are wonderful. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to talking to you in the comments as always, and I'll see you all soon in the next one. Bye-bye.